It's a pleasure to have you here at Confetti and Cards. I'm Lisa and I'm glad you stopped by. I'm sharing my process for creating this OMG, You Are Such an Instigator card. In this video, I will share a few tips and tricks, show you a preview of our new Galaxy Confetti. I have a few products here I'm using from Whimsy Stamps, including the Instigator stamps and dies, the Comic Burst A2 cover plate die, and the Chippy paint background stamp. In addition to these, I use a few other products and I'll discuss those as I go along. Off screen, I stamped and colored my image and stamped my sentiment. Now, the reason that I did that, I have other things that I would rather share with you over a simple coloring of a small image. So I decided we would skip that. Off screen, I die cut the Comic Burst A2 cover plate with Avalanche white cardstock, and I'm going to ink it up now. I have a blender brush here and some purple colors. I don't use purple very often, so I figured, you know what, let's step out of the comfort zone with this and let's use some purple. I have here Shaded Lilac, Wilted Violet, and I'm also using Villainous Potion on this just to get started. We are going to come in with some other inks as well. Here you can see I'm laying the inks down and I'm not being perfect with it. The point right now is just to get some of this color down on this panel. And as I'm working it, I'm like, I'm going to grab Whimsy's Comic Halftone Stencil and add some detail to this. You're going to see me grab that halftone stencil off to the right there and lay it over my panel and use some of the Villainous Potion to add to over the stencil to give a little bit of fun detail to this. Now, once we have that stencil covered on this, we're going to go ahead and move into a white card panel that's going to go behind this die cut panel. This is a simple technique. I have a video that will walk you through and give you all the details on it. But to keep it short and sweet here, what I'm doing is using a T ruler to put a center dot in the middle of an A2 card panel. And then we're going to take a scrap piece of white cardstock along with the blender brush and the inks that we just used, and we're going to create some rays on this panel. Now, the reason that we put that dot in the center is that's a guide for us. I keep my scrap piece of cardstock on that dot at all times and then just rotate it around the panel. And what we're doing is we're taking our blender brush and we're loading it up with ink and we're pushing it down onto the scrap paper, off of the edge of the scrap paper, and then lifting it up. And what that does is it creates this really pretty ray. So we're going to go all the way around our white panel here. And once we have our colors laid down, we're going to come in with a ruler and a fine tip black pen and add some little flicks to add some more detail to this. This is such a simple technique, but it does pack a punch. So like I mentioned, if you want to check out a video that will walk you step by step through this technique, I'll have it linked at the end of this video for you so you can check it out. If your panel is not perfect, it's okay, because by the time we get through adding all the different elements and layers to this, you're not going to see most of that. Okay, so remember, this is a card making process. And as I'm standing here looking at this, I like it, but I'm not loving it. And one of the things that I have found through my years of crafting is that when I'm ink blending, if I lay down some inks and I'm not happy with the way that it's coming along, if I come in with a darker color along the outer edges or even inner edges, and darken those up, it seems to bring the panel to life. So that's what I'm doing here. I grabbed that Uncharted Mariner Distress Oxide ink. It's absolutely gorgeous. I love it. And I'm just going around the outer edges and the inner edges of that die cut cover plate. I'm going to lay this on top of my panel here to see what we have. And I like it. The colors go great together, but it still needs a little bit more. So you got to remember, this is not a clean and simple card. This is, let's get in our craft room and just have fun and do all the different things that we can. So what I'm doing is a technique with a background stamp. And I actually am over on the Whimsy Stamps YouTube channel today sharing this technique. And I go into detail with it about how and why I started doing this. And I show you 3 different ways that you can use it to add details and texture to card panels, to die cut pieces. If you want to check it out, I have that link below in the description box. Head on over there and check it out. So what I do is I just take a rubber stamp and roll it up the sides of my finger so that I'm only using parts of it. And I put some ink on it, and then I stamp wherever I want to add a little bit more interest to my card panel. It's all pretty basic, really. So, but it adds such detail, and to me, it's something that I do usually at the very end of creating my card. If I'm looking at my card and thinking, this just needs something, I will grab a background stamp and start adding details to it with this technique. So here you see, I talked earlier about adding details to our colored images. That's what I was doing there, was adding some detail to that. I also added some detail to the back panel that we did the rays on, and I'm going to go over it with my stencil and add more detail to it. These cards are meant to be loaded. They're meant to be fun and punny and just have a lot going on for the recipient to look at and say, oh, I'm just now noticing there's this, or I'm just now noticing there's that. That's when I do these cards. I love the way they turn out. I love that I get to step out of my comfort zone and just play. This is my playtime. So I went ahead and added some mounting foam to the back of the die cut panel and added it to the panel with the rays. And now I'm adding mounting foam to the back of our Instagator so we can stick him in the center of our card here. Now, once we have him on the card and I'm looking at it, I realize I really want to darken this up even more. So I'm coming back in with that Villainous Potion ink, Uncharted Mariner ink, and I'm going to bring in some black soot along the very edges of this card panel. So I'm happy with the way this is looking. So I'm going to come in with my favorite Zig Cartoonist pen and add white splatter. This gives me the finest white splatter I've ever had. I just take the pen, shake it up, and tap it along the side of my finger. You can also get a refill barrel for this instead of replacing the whole pen. I'll have it linked below for you. One of the other things that I really like about this is that when the ink dries, it's very opaque and it has texture to it when it dries. It doesn't soak into the paper. It sits on top of the paper while it's drying. And then, of course, you get that nice texture from it. So I've played around with the OMG word die and shadow die from Whimsy. I die cut it from navy cardstock, black cardstock, white cardstock, and I finally decided that what I liked best was using some of the ink blended cardstock like I did for the background. And so I just used some of the same inks and did a quick ink blending on a scrap piece of paper and then ran that shadow die through my die cutting machine. I went ahead and cut the letters out of white to go on top of that. And I'm using glue and foam adhesive strips. So O, G, and the exclamation I'm gluing straight down to the shadow. And then the M, I'm going to pop that up with some mounting foam. Now these letters are sized perfectly to use the 1/8 of an inch foam adhesive strips. So that's what I'm using on the back of that M. For the sentiment, I decided I wanted to come in and kind of put that at an angle right beneath him. So I'm going to go ahead and add some mounting foam strips right underneath him, and then put my sentiment strip right across there as well. I am going to put some glue on each side of that sentiment strip so that it stays in place. And then I'm going to come in and snip the edges off with my spring scissors. So to pull all of this together, I'm going to do that technique with the background stamp again. And I just fold it up along the sides of my fingers, adding some black ink onto the stamp, and then stamping on the white cardstock only. So I'm adding some to the die cut words or the die cut letters from OMG, and I'm adding some to my sentiment strip as well. And you're going to see in the finished photo how it pulls all of this together. So we're going to go ahead and add some of our new Galaxy Sequin Confetti to the card. I'm just randomly placing a few here and there on there. I do want to talk a little bit about the confetti real quick. You can see in the tray, it's a blue, turquoise, and purple. It's a color shifting confetti sequin. And so depending on which way you're holding it, it's going to depend on what color it is. But the colors that you see there are perfect with the blues and the purples that I used on the card. And I absolutely love this sequin confetti. So one more tip using this technique, it's a great way to add some interest to the inside of your cards as well. You can see here, I'm just coming in with black ink and randomly stamping a few little details here and there with that Chippy paint background stamp. So here's the finished card. Let me know what you think of it, and let me know what you think of the new Galaxy Sequins in the comments below. I have all the products linked for you if you want to check them out. I really do appreciate you guys so much for taking the time and joining me. Don't forget, you can hop over to the Whimsy Stamps web YouTube channel and check out the technique video over there. Again, thanks for joining me, and until next time, please take care.